It used to be I wanted to give the clients what they wanted. I don't necessarily believe that that's the right approach any longer.
You sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
The detail matters.
To listen to your own instinct and not to care or do what everyone else is doing if it doesn't resonate with you. I grew up thinking that if you were being direct, you were being rude. I think if we're, as designers, we're not sort of trying to infuse a bit of us and the client together in a project, then we're not necessarily hitting the mark.
I'm Linda Habak, and this is Build Beautiful, where design meets depth. Alexandra Donohoe Church is a designer who listens before she draws. Through Decus Interiors, a studio she's led for over 15 years, Alexandra has defined a new language of Australian design, one that resists noise, one that lives in nuance. Her spaces are not spectacles, but studies of mood, materiality, and memory. She's known for detail, for restraint, for designs that feel felt. Every groove, every proportion, every edge considered. She doesn't chase trends. In fact, she often sets them. But what matters more is what lies beneath, her ability to read a client's brief, not just as a list, but as a window into psyche, desire, and dissonance. In this episode, we talk about deciphering what people think they want versus what they truly need. We explore the psychology of taste, the cost of creative leadership, and the invisible rigour that makes a room quietly unforgettable. This is a story about discernment, about building a business through a different kind of ambition, and about what happens when you sweat the small stuff, not to impress, but to move. Welcome to my conversation with Alex. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm so honoured. So you're in your old stomping ground in Hunters Hill.
Yes.
I only knew this recently, that you grew up in Hunters Hill. We're sitting here in my living room in Hunters Hill. Take me back to what life was like. I know you were very young, but yes. I'm curious, when did design become a pathway for you? At what point in your life were you moved by a space, an object that sort of inspired this pathway for you?
Well, in news that will probably surprise no one, it was not in the mean streets of Boronia Park, Hunters Hill, that I discovered anything to do with design. But that was probably simply a consequence of the age that I was. So I was born and raised very, very close to where we're sitting right now. And we moved around the time I was 7 or 8 years old. We relocated over to Seattle in the States. We ended up staying for about 7 years. So my memory of this part of the world is sort of fairly limited because I was quite young. But when we moved to the States, I think that would have been when I first became aware of design, and not design as a concept that I understood. Like I didn't know it had a name, design.
Yeah.
But we lived on this island in the middle of Seattle called Mercer Island. It was the early 90s. So we used to get these catalogues, these furniture catalogues in the mail. I don't know if it was a thing that was done in Australia very commonly. I would just sort of love getting these catalogues in the mail because I got to sort of like open them, flip through and sort of daydream a little bit. So in my mind, it was all about rearranging my room.
Wow.
And so that would be my first recollection of when space and design became known to me, when I realised it was even a thing.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, it was just there's furniture in the room. There's nothing more than that. But then I started to be really intrigued, and I would sort of imagine, what if I put this thing there, and what if I moved that, and what if I like sponged the wall in that colour, because it was a big thing then, sponging.
Yes.
And what if I painted it all green? You know, like it was just the first time I started to daydream. Because I wasn't particularly creative as a kid. I wasn't particularly artistic. I don't think I was doing an art class until I was in high school. So that was really my first awareness. And my mother really did. She loved to visit antique stores. She loved to go shopping for furniture. She loved looking at beautiful objects. So I think I inherited a little bit of that awareness from her.
And what took you guys to Seattle?
My father was an engineer with a company called CSR, and he was offered a role managing a couple of companies over there, and they gave him I don't know if this was common or if it is still common. They gave him 3 choices of city to live in.
Right.
One was Atlanta, one was Las Vegas, and one was Seattle. And we'd never been to any of those 3 cities. But we sort of, I think Dad and Mum really just decided, yep, Seattle seems good, close to Canada.
Yeah.
It's in the Pacific Northwest, fairly, like surrounded by good, lots of nature. Yeah. And so off we went.
Wow. Yeah. And you were there for 7 years?
I was there for 7. My brother just moved back last year. So he was there for over 30 years.
There, really?
Yeah. Got married to a beautiful American woman, had 2 kids, but they've just relocated back to Thirroul.
Thirroul? Yeah. I remember talking about that. Love Thirroul, down south.
Yeah. So we moved back sort of at the end of my dad's contract, and then my brother stayed. And then we relocated back to just down the road from where we are.
And so then obviously went to university.
Yes.
Did you go straight into interior design?
I did not.
You did not? No, tell me this story.
No. So I don't know that I would say that I really pursued design or anything creative through middle school, junior high when I was over in the States, or high school when I returned to Sydney. I would say that it was always sort of in the back of my mind that it would be a really amazing thing to do. But at the time, which was, we're talking the late 90s, I didn't think that it was a viable job. I didn't think that you could earn a living doing something that you enjoyed, which is an interesting concept when you unpack that, because I think I believed that work was inherently difficult and had to be hard and arduous, and you'd have to be incredibly lucky to do something that you actually had a passion for.
Or that was creative.
Or that was creative, correct. So I think I thought that it was a bit of an indulgent profession. There was nothing noble about it. And so I had it on my list of preferences for uni. I went to the University of New South Wales. I ended up doing interior architecture. But before I landed in that degree, I actually applied and went into landscape architecture, because I thought that I'll do something that's connected to the environment. It'll be a noble profession. It'll be something that's built on goodness, And now I can see that actually I was just really misguided in that belief that it wasn't sort of a profession that had legs.
I resonate with that. Because design was so part of my DNA, but I didn't feel that was the pathway I should take. But when I then finished, and it was like, it's going to sound really arrogant, but I didn't feel it was a good enough profession. That's not the right word, but a noble. I think you say it way more eloquently.
No, I think that's a common feeling.
So what is the turning point? What is the shape-shifting moment in your mind where it takes it from it's a bit frivolous? Because we know it's not frivolous. Now I know it's not frivolous. Yeah. It's really important work. But what was that moment for you where you kind of saw the whole profession differently?
I can't say that I recall a specific moment when I was studying. The transition from landscape architecture into interior arch, the degree, was perhaps a little less academic. I woke up in a horticulture class with my head on the table and I looked up and the lecturer was staring right at me and he was just shaking his head, and I realised that I just wasn't a scientifically minded person in that moment, because it was there was a significant part of that degree is science. You need to have a pretty sound understanding of it to make things grow, to keep things growing. So there's science and then there's the creative, and it's a degree that certainly marries the two. So I think it was that moment that I went, oh, sugar, I really am not in the right place. And so the Faculty of the Built Environment, which has architecture and construction management, landscape architecture, also had interior architecture. And that degree was fairly straightforward to transfer into. It was a degree that still was finding its feet.
Right.
But I would say that I found an incredible group of friends who are my best friends to this day in design studio. And I would say that the rigour of that course, the intensity that they kind of put you under to deliver. I think 200 people started the degree and like 30 graduated in our cohort. I can't speak for other years. But I think I really started to appreciate that, no, there's something to this that actually is sort of at odds with what I'd understood to be the case. Yes, yeah. And I think there's a fair bit of kind of like snobbery and bias in that world, be it from the construction side of things or from the architectural side of things. Like you can do interior architecture, you can't call yourself an interior architect because the term architect is protected. And there's really good reasons for that. So I'm not pushing back against it. And I still come up against it to this day. I was in a meeting like 4 weeks ago, consultants coordination meeting, and the project manager was asking where we were taking the clients. We're just taking them to some fabric houses and to some furniture stores. And I said, no, but it's really cute that that's what you think we do. And I had to kind of put him in his place because we do so much more than that, but no one really ever believes it because they see this really glamorous side. You know, there's services coordination, there's work with structural engineers, hydraulic, waterproofing consultants. There's all sorts that goes into the making of a home. And the idea that that's sort of only the domain of precious few and typically male practitioners is just total BS.
So how do you fight against that? Because I mean, I understand and I've seen it in my experience as well. I mean, you still have particular, and I don't want to be sexist at all, but I think there is a real sort of women versus male. You do this, you're in this box. You do that, you're in this box. But saying,
I've got many ideas. Yes, I've got many thoughts about it.
But tell me, like, unpack that with me. What are your thoughts on how can we move the dial on this? And I know the DIA is doing a lot, and there's lots of changes there, which is amazing. But it feels like an age-old discussion.
I think it genuinely goes back to your growing up and what was modelled and what you saw and what you heard. Yeah. What do I mean by that? There's a lot to that because it's a vascular system. There's what was in your family of origin. There's also what was happening around that family of origin. So in my family, both my parents worked. They both worked hard. My mother worked full-time when I was growing up. And so we saw and had modelled for us that women work and great. At the same time, I think my parents were also a product of a generation of, they were both raised in large Catholic families, and there was very much the boys get to do this and the women or the girls get to do that. And so when we moved to the States, my brother went to this really prestigious high school. He's very smart, still is, and he was sent off to this private school. And I remember asking my mother, oh, well, when do I get to go to Lakeside? Her response was, oh, well, no, you don't get to because he's a boy. And it was a co-ed school, but the message that I received was, we see you differently. Yeah. Not just from an intellectual perspective. I don't think that's what they were saying. I think what they were saying was like, we can invest in the boys' education, but your education will take second seat. And if I think about like my extended family, that's very much true of the males and the females. Right, okay. And I think that was purely something that was embedded in them and imbued in them. And then they took that on. And I think that's why I say you have to go back to the very beginning. Yes. You have to kind of not just teach, but model, because that's the important part. It's one thing to say, it's another to do it. You have to model that you can have a career, you can have a family. They are absolutely impossible to do together and feel like you're getting it perfect, because that's never going to happen. So just drop that idea, because it will never work out that way unless you have substantial help around you. And even then you'll feel like you're failing in one way or another. Absolutely. So let go of the dream, because it doesn't exist. It's a mirage. But I think if within a family, it's about modelling it and talking about it and seeing that it's really normal. Culturally though, I mean, I look around at my friendship cohort and I notice now maybe more than I ever have how there are these real imbalances in what are the expectations for women versus men. And I don't want to bash anyone because...
but it's a perspective. It's a perspective.
Yeah.
And it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, because I think if I really reflect on it, women tend to start... Here's the starting line for both of us. They're already there waiting, the men, and we're back here having to like overcome all these other things to get to the starting line. And then we can start the race. Not that it's a competition, but we're talking about a sort of like a starting point. I feel like we've got all of these hurdles before the starting line to overcome. So I think that the sort of the familial approach, the sort of the social cultural approach, that's critical in getting people, particularly women, to sort of get to a point where they feel like, no, I'm totally... This is equal. Thank you.
And I've earned a seat at the table and I deserve to be here. Especially when you are I've been in a few consulting meetings where you've got all the consultants on the table and you're the only female in that meeting. Yeah. And often they don't think you have any idea what you're talking about. Coming back to that point, because yes, it is layered and it does go back to all of those, from infancy and all of that in your environment. But in that moment when you're at the table, where do you get the confidence?
Early days, before you've had real meaningful experience, before you're really able to say, I've got tons of runs on the board. Yeah. Before then, it's fake it until you make it. and I hate sayings, but I think that one is particularly true, because you have to present in a way that doesn't invite doubt.
Yes.
So you are faking it to a point, but you're doing it because you know that it's where you should be. Yeah. You just need the experience. Like That's everyone, every single person at that table started with no experience, and you're no different to them. And then I think once you've had runs on the board, then I think it's a case of being able to say, yep, no, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And you're speaking from experience because you've been through that before.
Yeah. But I do think that, again, coming back to the upbringing, if you were taught to believe that your viewpoint was lesser than someone else's, you're going to struggle with that prospect or that concept in adulthood. If you were brought up to believe that your view is just the same as anyone else's, regardless of gender or age, you will struggle less. You will probably find it quite natural.
So did you struggle?
Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah. Absolutely.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what work did you have to do on yourself to reframe that, to realise that you're of equal value?
I think there's been a lot of introspection, a lot of reflection over the course of the last, I'd say 20 years before I started the business, to be honest. So I started the studio in 2009, and that was really a consequence of the GFC, layoffs. The industry generally was really depressed, so there was not a lot of work around, very difficult. And I was working for a studio that had about 12, and we whittled down to 4, and I think I was the last one to go before the sort of principals, and then there was the owner. And in hindsight, baptism of fire, it was great because it forced me to sort of leap out and go.
Did you start before you were ready, do you think, as far as setting up Decus?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
But if you reflect on all of the things, I don't necessarily think you should know everything before you start something, because you would probably talk yourself out of it.
Oh, absolutely.
You think about becoming a parent. If you know about all the things that could happen as a parent, you just wouldn't do it.
Absolutely.
But it's the greatest thing you can do. If that's your jam. Yeah. If that's your jam, then it's incredibly fulfilling. But my goodness, if someone explained to me all the risks and all of the downsides and all of the everythings, I would have been like, hell no, I'm running in the other direction. And I would say that it's the same with the studio or a business. I knew that I didn't want to work for other people. I knew that I wanted to work for myself. What was it about that? Can I ask you, when you say I knew, what did you know exactly? Because I think some people are built to have their own business and others are just not born that way. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I have this conversation with people all the time, and those that have their own businesses and often, are designers and they're very good at the work, but they're like, I'm just terrible at running a business. Yes. So what is it? What is that innate voice? Is it a voice? Is it a feeling? Can you articulate it? You know what? It actually might present as a voice occasionally. I think there is an inner monologue that kind of does roll around in my head. But initially, it's always a feeling. It's like something is up. I think I've got a very good intuition, very good sense of intuition. And I typically will know something's going on before something actually does unfold. I think back then, because I was in my late 20s, I was pretty bullshit. I was just like, I have to prove something. And I think back then I thought I had to prove something to other people, but I now know that I had to prove it to myself. Yeah. Back then it was like, I'm going to show this person and that person that I can do it. And now reflecting back on it, I was just trying to prove something to myself.
And can you link that back to not being sent to the private school?
Oh, yeah.
And so 100%. That's kind of all...
100%. Any parents of daughters, like what you say to girls is crucial to the trajectory of their life, I think. The languaging that you use, how you approach raising them, I think it's absolutely crucial. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I think, like you made the point earlier, is your parents, for instance, my parents are just parenting based on...
They're doing their best.
Yeah, they're doing their best.
They're doing their best.
You only know that.
You know what, if you do better when you know better.
Absolutely.
So I do believe that, so what I'm saying is certainly not to criticise older generations, because things are just... There wasn't an awareness of certain things back then that there is more of an awareness now. And we will, no doubt, in the next generation, become aware of things that we're not aware of now.
That's right.
And that is just simply evolution, I think.
It absolutely is. But then it's challenging when you're the person
Yes.
that has to kind of go, I've got to work on this because I've spent a long time trying to work out why I do certain things.
Yes.
Why do I think a certain way? And then, you go down on this whole road of self-discovery and trying to work it out because you actually get frustrated with yourself. Like I get frustrated with myself that I do a thing a certain way. And so I'm interested in what that journey looks like for you because you're a very successful individual, human, and obviously business. And so just having this conversation, I can see some of that desire, that ambition, that rigor comes maybe originally from wanting to prove something.
Yes.
Others, yourself.
Yes.
But then what keeps that burning feeling inside of you of wanting to continue to grow and be better? Because I feel like maybe there was, over the years, there's been a shift once that awareness comes in.
Yeah, I would say that it might have started from a place of wanting to prove that I could achieve something or do something specifically. So I think I remember someone saying, oh, you'll never go to uni. I decided, well, tick. Just little things that kind of you will reflect back on. I'm like, no, I'll do that. So when I first graduated high school, I took a year off and I went and did gap year and I worked and then travelled. And I lucked out. I got a job at a firm that's very well known here in Sydney, SJB, and I basically just sorted samples in their library for like the first 6 months and earned enough money to go backpacking. And then I came back and they gave me a job and I stayed there for another 4 years. And then I moved to another firm, Bates Smart, and then I moved to another firm and another firm. And I just tried different things until I felt like I found a place or a typology that felt right. But to answer your question, kind of keep going or growing? Is that what you're sort of getting at?
How do you keep that fire? Because it's one thing to be motivated by having a sense of wanting to prove something.
Yes.
But then once you unveil that and you see it differently, what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated to want to continue to push the boundaries and be better?
Yeah, I think I knew that I wanted to work for myself and I knew I wanted to do beautiful work, but that was it. That was literally all I knew at the time. And then I think in the course of actually diving in and getting into the reality of what a business entails, what employing your first part-timer looks like, what bridging the gap between a quiet period of work looks like, how to manage that client that you don't know how to connect with, or how to address a problem where you've made a mistake and you've missed something. All of those little moments, they're all the beginning stitches of a blanket that just gets longer and more intricate as you go along. So I never thought, oh, I'm just going to do beautiful work and that's going to be it. I was like, okay, I want to do beautiful work. So how do you hone your craft? Well, that's a long-term, you don't do that overnight. That's years and years and years of research and trial and error and getting runs on the board and doing projects which can last for up to 3 or 4 years. And then there's the people side of things, because what we do is deeply and inherently people and human related. So learning to navigate clients, suppliers, collaborators, staff members, that's a whole other education process. Then learning how you're relating to all of that. And I think that's where the gold is, because I would often go, God, that person's really pissing me off. Or shit, that situation made me really I feel so dumb. Or, oh God, how did that happen? Or, oh my gosh, I'm just overwhelmed. Any of those kind of reactions, they're all little signifiers. They're all telling you that there's something else to explore there. So you can go down the craft pathway. You can learn more skills around relating to people and how to manage people or how to interact with people. But it really all is just fertile ground for me to learn more about myself. So ironically, the studio, a bit like kids, when you have a child, they teach you so much about yourself.
Absolutely.
And the business has done the same thing. It has challenged me so many times, and every time it's challenged me, I'm like, why am I butting up against this thing? What is that thing? It's never the thing that you think it is. It's always something else. So that has been like an infinite teacher.
Can we talk about a couple of examples? Because I want to understand, what have you learnt about yourself?
Some of the kind of probably fairly typical examples would be, for a very long time, I struggled to delegate. Because I was like, I'm going to just do it quicker and faster. So that's a pretty common one. I think that I hear that quite a lot from people. Yeah. but not necessarily connecting the dots between that and, say, ultimate burnout. Because if you continue to do that and you get bigger and there are more people, more jobs, more projects, you can't sustain that management of yourself, of your own system, of the people around you. You'll just burn out. So that was probably one. Things like early on when I first started employing people, I just wanted everyone to like me and to be friends with them. That's a really, really big pitfall. You've got to be really careful of that. And so I made a lot of decisions not to have conversations I probably should have had earlier and let things go that shouldn't have been allowed to kind of continue going. And that's not to say that it was the employee's misconduct or anything. It's to say that workplace relationships, it's really critical to find a good way to communicate effectively and directly. I grew up thinking that if you were being direct, you were being rude. I think that's quite a female trait or a female kind of belief. It's certainly in my world, I honestly thought, oh no, I can't be rude. And I encounter it a lot still. Like some of my team will come in and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. And I'm like, don't apologise. You're doing your job.
Yeah.
Like stop apologising for just being.
But isn't it
in my
interesting?
world?
Because I think we do feel as women, and it's a generalist.
My male team members do not do that.
But they don't
do it. No.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. It's purely gender based, I think.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I didn't want to upset anyone, hurt their feelings. But ultimately, you need a job done. You need a job done a certain way. And if something's not working, and that might have been because I wasn't communicating properly, because they weren't thinking that I was, asking for a certain thing. It can be all sorts of reasons. It's not necessarily a fault-based thing, but I certainly didn't do direct communication well back then. And I've learned to do it now because I believe you can certainly do it in a compassionate way or an empathetic way, respectful way. Yeah. But back then I didn't think that the two could be done.
And what did you do to educate yourself or develop yourself in that way? Because no one comes out of university or college with a handbook on how to run a business, how to manage people.
I'm a really big believer in getting outside help in because I think fundamentally, if something's not working and you continue to persist just going along the same way that you've done things and not changing the method, the approach, the perspective to try and sort of get into a better flow or to alleviate that issue or to get rid of that stress or whatever it is, that to me is madness.
Yeah.
Like I've certainly got people in my life who have for the last several years complained of the same issues, and I don't understand why people wouldn't want to try and work out a better way. So I'm big on trying to find other ways, and I think to do that you do need to bring in people who either have that knowledge or experience or both and can sort of help guide you in different directions. But I would say that it's also like, again, everything's been fairly intuitive. Like something will just say, okay, yeah, you need to bring in some external resources for that. And off I go. I don't sit down and go, this year I'm going to do this. It's not that formulaic for me. But I brought in
triggered by having a challenge. Let me find a solution for it.
This doesn't feel sustainable. This doesn't feel like I want it to feel. How do we change the trajectory of what we're doing and what needs to happen to do that? And often I don't know what the answer is, but I know that if I go and speak to someone about it, they might shed some light on something that I wasn't aware of before. I know I'm speaking in real generalizations right now, but I've worked with a coach for like a decade now. Yeah. Prior to that, I worked with another individual who's very closely related to that coach, and they'll come and do our yearly team sessions. So we're big on coaching in and sort of development generally within the studio. We have monthly one-on-ones for each team member, and then we have
this is all with the development coach that you work with?
This is we have two, so one for the team and then we have one that I work with and my studio director works with. I truly believe that investment has paid tremendous dividends because the working relationship, like the interworkings of the team, interpersonal skills is the best it's ever been since we've been doing that.
That's amazing. So, and that's a huge investment to invest in the team. So, because I think the flip side is, what is the cost to
not doing it?
To not doing it, exactly. Yeah. And so,
but it's also just madness. If something feels like it's not working, wouldn't you want to like if it's really clear that there's like smoke coming out of the bonnet of the car, like why wouldn't you pull over and call the mechanic? Like, it just seems crazy not to do it. And I think because back then my idea was, I want to get beautiful projects and I want to work for myself, very basic, 2 statements. And as time has gone on, that vision, that idea has essentially refined and refined.
Looking back at where you started in 2009 and it was, I want to do beautiful projects, and now you've obviously come a long way.
Yes.
What do you see that you and the practice stand for now, and where do you think you want to go?
I think it's evolving. Ultimately, we wanted to, and again, these are sort of somewhat general statements, but inherently we want to work with really aligned people and we want to deliver craftsmanship and quality. And those are, again, fairly broad adjectives to use. But craftsmanship is something that really is much harder to find than we think it is. And specificity around the brief is also much harder to find, I think, than we think it is. So what do I mean by that? I guess we take on only a certain number of projects a year. We intentionally keep it small. I'm involved in all of the projects. And our goal is really to work with, and this is our first client characteristic, emotionally intelligent clients, because we feel like we can really align with what they're after and we can really work together. If we can communicate freely and openly, have direct conversations, it not be like this dance or difficult to sort of suggest something or pivot or, deal with a problem, because construction is simply a series of problems to be solved.
Exactly.
If we can work with people who are on board with that, then our job is like 95% easier and more straightforward. But we really just want to work on really quality projects, and ones that are ultimately a reflection of not just the client, but also probably more us as well as a studio. It used to be I wanted to give the clients what they wanted. I don't necessarily believe that that's the right approach any longer, which might sound controversial, but I think if we're, as designers, we're not sort of trying to infuse a bit of us and the client together in a project, then we're not necessarily hitting the mark. Because as a studio, we don't have like a brand. You don't come to us for a specific look. We really do try to sort of return a project that is wholly the client's, but we can't do that without it being a bit of us as well.
Yeah. Looking in, I don't think you have a signature per se, but what is the thread that I see? And one of the things I want to talk about, and I'm jumping around because I want to go back and talk about client psychology and stay there for a bit, but I'll just make this point. The thread that I see when you talk about specificity, that's what I see is your superpower, is the magic bullet of Decus, is you sweat the small stuff. The detail matters. And it's like, for someone who appreciates it, it hurts my heart. It's that beautiful. I get a visceral reaction when I see some of the work and I'm like, I'm just like, holy, like, how on earth does your mind even come up with it? Like, it's so beautiful. And I want to spend time talking about that, but I am jumping around. I want to go back to clients. How are you using intuition? Because obviously you take a brief. There's a process. You have a process. You take a brief. You have the conversations. You get to know the client. How do you take what they tell you and then feed them back that beautiful concept and project, but give them something they don't even know they need? Because often clients don't even know what they need.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? I just think when I look at the work on the end, and if I roll it back and reverse engineer it, I'm thinking, where did it start and what do those conversations look like, and how do you then lead them to get them there?
Yes. The first thing I would say is it's not a case of this is the number of bedrooms I want, this is the number of bathrooms I want, this is the budget we have, and these are the things we like the look of. It's not that at all. It's actually trying to jump into their minds and their brains a little. So we have this extensive kind of briefing exercise. We did it with a new client last night, and I always get a kick out of it because we're asking questions that they really aren't expecting to be asked. The reason we like to get to know not just how they move through the course of their day, but what gives them joy, what pisses them off, what do they do to relax? What do they do when they're angry? Like, where do they spend the most of their time? What textures do they love? What textures do they hate? What colours do they love? What colours do they hate? Those questions are all there for sure. But ultimately the value is like, okay, well, how do you rank time, cost, quality? Like, where does the project sit in your priority list? Like, how do you like to communicate? Lots of detail, significant detail, minimal detail. Who makes the financial decisions? Who makes the design decisions? Like, there's all these aspects to a job that are so much more than just the functional, like, what kind of fridge do you want? You know, like, there's so much more to it. And the reason for that is because we're designing homes. We're not designing offices or commercial spaces that people will the transit through. We're designing a home where they will spend 90% of their time, that they will use in every possible way across the course of the lifespan of that home. So helping us to understand what they value, that's the key. Some people, they will really value the process, and they'll be thrilled if they have a really fun time through the process and they got to the end and it's kind of good. Other people will value that every single detail was interrogated and absolutely the right detail. And they're all totally different approaches to making a home or a house. You might have people who are really cool just chilling at the local cafe, and others who want to go to a Michelin star restaurant, and they're both places you go to eat.
Yeah,
it's the same function, but very different ways of going about it. So we try and understand the value, what they value and in what order, and who they are as people, and then we reflect that back to them in the interior.
And can I take it one step back? Do you, in terms of qualifying a client, do you have a process around that? Because can you learn that level of depth in terms of a potential client's value early on?
I think so. I think we're much better now. And that was probably a point that goes to a couple of questions ago about, you know, what have you learned? One of the things I've really learned is that we attract a certain kind of energy into our lives, or a certain kind of dynamic, or a certain situation. Like, sometimes we repeat behaviors because we're used to them. And for a really long time, I attracted a certain type of client into my life because it was something that I was very used to in the rest of my life. And without saying too much, it always ended in a really difficult sort of result. It was always really compromised. It was always very challenging. And I had to kind of go on this journey to try and work out that was happening. I wasn't aware of it. I always attracted a certain kind of female client that needed a lot of hand-holding, a lot of managing, and in the end was never satisfied. And when I reflect on, you know, the next client who's not that, but they're thrilled with the outcome and we do work for them again and again, like, I just sort of came to realize that there was something happening where I was sort of thinking I could save this person, or I could somehow make things better for them. But the truth is, no person external to yourself can make you happy. So no client will come to us and be quote unquote happy because we do their house. Their happiness is their own to manage and is their responsibility.
You're not responsible.
No. And it took me a really long time to work that out. So we're now much better, I think, at identifying the aligned clients and sort of, you know, just saying to people who we maybe believe aren't as aligned, we'll always recommend other people that they might be able to work with, because I truly believe that if it's not right for one party, it's generally not right for the other, even if the other party thinks they want that thing.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. And do you have a process around how you qualify clients? We don't, it's not rocket science. We have an initial my studio manager will have an initial interaction, get the particulars of the project, and then I'll either meet with them or go to site and meet with them on site and take a look around. And then we'll determine whether it's something that we sort of comfortable putting together a proposal for. Amazing.
It's a bit of speed dating.
Yeah, bit of speed dating. Going back to the psychology of a client, I'm talking because I want to link in this idea of trends now.
Oh, yes.
How do you decipher what's truly kind of their interest level desire versus what's being fed to them from what they're seeing? Because we're inundated with imagery now and we're in an attention economy.
Oh my gosh, it's wild.
Yeah. So how do you navigate that, and how do you take try, because it's almost like sometimes I feel like you need to separate them from the bombardment to really distill down what the essence is of that particular, of their home, their project. So how do you manage that?
The first thing I would say is there's no one formula to sort of getting to the crux of what we're going to deliver for them. But I would say that in the first instance, taking a brief, as you say, is one thing. It's receiving their list of wants and needs and desires. But often I will take that away. I'll sit with it and I'll really reflect on, in my experience, has that thing that they've asked for ever worked out for anyone we've done that for before? And if the answer is no, then I'm pretty happy to say to someone, look, let's reconsider that. I also am really upfront with people. I will ask them first and foremost, do you want me to tell you the truth or do you want me to tell you what I think you want to hear? And they will always choose number one, but it at least gives them the option and it gives me permission to do that. Because I think it's a dance. You have to kind of convey things in a certain way. Sometimes I heard a talk recently where this really celebrated Melbourne architect, he was saying, you know, sometimes you have to give a client what you want without them noticing. And that's what you want because you know it's the right thing but they might resist it. But if you do it by stealth, so sometimes there's a bit of doing it by stealth.
Make it think it's their idea.
There's a little bit of that. But truly, like I think when you're working with people who are aligned and you've got a really good rapport and you know, we try and use humour, we're like easygoing, we're not super formal people. I think you can then have a conversation and say, hey, I know that you love this thing. Like I've got a client right now who really wants a big aquarium in his office and he'll probably get it. But I'm really happy to say, don't think it's the right thing, but if you love it that much, knock yourself out, we'll do it for you because it's not my home. I'm not going to spend 24 hours a day in it. So if he wants tropical fish in his office, he can have that. It's his home.
If anyone can make that look stunning, it's you. So,
but I think people appreciate honesty. I actually think that as creatives, we're often really fearful of telling people the truth, but actually it's what they want to hear.
That's right.
I've worked with some people who are surrounded by yes people and you have to say no when you really believe it should be a no.
What surprises you about when you are in a situation where you can see there's yes people everywhere, but you decide to take a different course and just go, no, I don't agree.
Yeah.
What's been the most surprising thing in standing up and owning that space?
I think that people are quite receptive to hearing a divergent view. It keeps things interesting.
I think it's freedom. To me, like if you have the ability to say what you think.
Oh, it's absolutely freedom. Yeah, absolutely.
It's freedom because it's like, well, this is what I'm being paid to do, is to tell you the truth and to tell you what I think.
But isn't it interesting when you think about that kind of, again, going back to what we were talking about the early days, if you sort of were raised to not, to feel like you weren't supposed to speak out of turn.
Absolutely.
That's a skill that you really have to work hard to learn.
Totally.
In your professional world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can hands down say I was always taught, don't mind your P's and Q's, don't speak out of turn, you know, keep your opinion to yourself. And that's actually the antithesis of what I'm paid for now, which is to tell people what I really think.
That's right, exactly.
I think you have to have examples because another question we ask is, are you an evidence-based person or do you tend to give benefit of the doubt? Some people really need to see evidence of something that's being put forward. Others, trusting, let's go with it. And they're very different approaches in terms of how you present to those clients.
And so do you adjust the way you present a concept or information to a client based on
not formatting, but articulation. Absolutely.
Okay.
Not necessarily formatting. And I'll refer to it because it is important. I think for someone to be receptive to an idea, I think that they need to be reminded that they've asked for these ideas over and over again.
Yeah.
And so you can speak to, here's these questions, here are your answers.
You said
like, and not that we've ever done that. Like, no, we've never pointed to item number
Excuse
6
me, question
and gone,
number 76, and you said
you told me that you were a 7 out of 10 on the adventure scale. This is definitely 2 out of 10 behaviour. No, I think I think it opens people up to thinking about it in a different way. I remember one client said to me, "Oh my gosh, this is like marriage counselling," and I was like, "But we really do have to get to know you if we're going to design a home that you're going to be inherently comfortable in. You're going to be inherently comfortable in. And you both have differences of opinion. So we do need to know, how do you see things? How do you see things? Otherwise, how are we supposed to deliver something to you? I mean, if you don't tell the waiter that you have an allergy and that you don't like mushrooms, you might well get like mushroom risotto. Like
Exactly.
You've got to actually be specific in what you're...
But I don't think clients know how to do that, actually.
No,
they don't know.
that's our
and
role.
That's the job.
That's our role. Our role is, it's many, many, many hats, but our role is to tease that out of them and that I think is the education process. It is, if you're looking to design a home, it's not like going to the spa. It is a high impact sport. It is like jumping out of the side of a helicopter and skiing down the side of a mountain several times in a month. Every site meeting will feel like that. Yeah. Especially when you look at the progress claims, and that there's ups and downs, and that's okay because that's how the process goes. There's ebbs and flows. I don't know who invented the concept of perfectionism, but man, I hope karma comes for them in the next lifetime.
I agree.
Because it really has it affects not just how we do things as practitioners and how we do things as people, but also the expectations of the people on the other side of the table. If you have a client who's expecting perfection, well, we're going to disappoint you because we're not AI bots sitting around a table. We're all human, and we're going to do things that maybe you don't understand the logic of or the reasoning for, but if we have the opportunity to talk about it, then it'll make complete sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And there's also 13 different ways to do the same thing. So having the opportunity to be able to speak to people about that in a really level and reasonable way is what we're after, which is why alignment is so important.
Absolutely, exactly. And that only comes to, I think, with time and experience and having, let's be honest, a couple of difficult clients along the way.
Oh my gosh.
And you kind of go, I never want to do that again.
Yeah. No, as Prue has, I think she shared this with you as well, but Prue, our coach, I really wish there was another word for that because she's not a coach. She's so much more. But anyway, that idea of, instead of, this was a problem, well, what was the thinking of it as a teacher.
Absolutely.
So that's been pretty transformational in my own way of thinking, because I now realise no one gets anything right 100% of the time. No. And nor should they.
That's right.
And we didn't pop out of the womb being able to run a marathon. You fell over 1,000 times before you started to learn how to stumble a couple of walks before you ended up honing that skill to become something really impressive.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Just going back to your point about, I think sometimes you need the lessons, you need the difficulties, whether it's a client or a project or a builder or a consultant or whatever it is, because often the challenge that comes out of that is more about, well, for me, it's been more about me and learning about myself in that situation.
It's all about us.
It's not
in a sort of a self-centered way, but
but
all of those lessons are lessons for us.
That's exactly right.
Every single problem that comes up, okay, well, what did I learn? What was the teacher in that? Okay, I could have done this, that. Why am I annoyed by that? Unpack that. Okay, what has that got to do with? Oh, yeah, I have this thing. Yeah.
But that's a growth mindset too, because not everybody thinks like that. Not everybody has that perspective to say, what is the lesson here? What's the teacher?
Yes.
What do I need to change and adjust or change my focus on or my thinking on? Or what process do I need to add into my system in order to circumvent that the next time? It is a total mindset shift.
So true.
Yeah.
But I think the more unpacking of why I had a response to a certain situation, the more I do in that kind of world, the more I look at things and unpick it and why did that annoy me? Or why did I get frustrated by that? What's going on there? I discover things that are so far out of what I thought they were. But once I address them, everything gets lighter.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I came out of a period of burnout, or I'm emerging from a period of burnout now from the last couple of years. Because when I had my son, I was back at work 5 weeks later because there was no there was no one else. The team I had at the time, 4 other seniors had babies within that 12-month period. So everyone was on maternity leave. And so I couldn't take maternity leave properly. And I think I really just ended up burning out over the subsequent sort of 5 years. And I feel like now, only now am I getting to a point, my son's 7, am I getting to a point where all of the sort of looking and unpacking and introspection has sort of equated to feeling much lighter.
Can I?
And in flow.
I wanted to move on to trends, but I want to stay here in burnout for a minute. What did burnout look like for you? What does it look like?
Yeah. Burnout for me, I think, culminated in just this kind of like intense exhaustion for what I thought was no reason. Standard
Typical
kind of like,
female mother,
mom, totally.
Run my own business. I'm exhausted. I don't know why I'm exhausted. That doesn't make sense at all.
Why am I struggling to get out of bed today? So I think it culminated in intense exhaustion and brain fog. I sort of just, a real change in energy. Like my energy just really started to wind right down. As someone who's always worked so much, it was very foreign to feel that way. So I wouldn't say that I recognized it immediately as burnout, but there were a couple of instances where I thought, I really need to address this. And so through sort of a bit of a serendipitous set of circumstances, I ended up starting to work with someone who specializes in somatic therapy. It wasn't something I knew much about at the time, and it's based on addressing your nervous system and addressing patterns and systems within your nervous system that you are typically very unconscious of, these patterns, and essentially going in and sort of dealing with old stuff. Some trauma, just some stuff. Like there's combination, because trauma can mean very different things for different people. But definitely addressing some old wounds, some old trauma, and just starting to unpack why certain things were my automatic responses, my automatic programming. Yeah. And that process is, again, it is not an overnight thing. It's a slow, deliberate, intentional, but very intuition-led approach. It's been the most transformational thing I've ever done in my life.
Really?
Ever.
In what way?
Ever. It's just fascinating how we separate the mind and the body, and they're so linked, and we are, as human beings, so linked to one another, who we end up with in our lives, how they're linked to us, why we've drawn them into our lives, why we're drawn to theirs, how our energetic footprint, like what we emanate, what we receive. That's wild. It's also wild. It's also connected. And I think that often life will throw up this series of situations that you can either choose to embrace and learn from. And I mean, I don't want to sound like a self-help book, but I deeply, truly believe that the idea that we all exist up here in our brains is such BS. Every horrible thing that happened to us that is baked into our memory, it's all stored in our body. And if we don't go back and actually sit with it, feel the pain and release it, it will stay there. Yeah. And it will manifest into something horrible.
Absolutely. And
so that's how I started to address it. And I knew that there was something that needed to be addressed. I was getting lots of signs from my body that I needed to tackle it. So I found this incredible woman, and I see her regularly.
Work through that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's almost like a rehabilitation. That's not the right word, but what does life look like now that you're coming out of that burnout phase? Because building a business comes at a cost. I mean, everything is a trade-off in life. And when you're dedicated and working at the volume and the level of detail that you work at, there are trade-offs, right? So what does life look like now, and what are you holding as important? How does that impact the decisions you make in terms of what the future of Decus looks like?
It's essentially lifted this really heavy weight that I think I was carrying around for a very long time. I think I was felt like I was spinning lots and lots and lots of plates, but it felt like I was just
under the weight of
this weight. And because it's really slow but deliberate work, but it feeds into every aspect of your life. Over the last, say, 5 or 6 years, that I just feel like I've shed this kind of coat that I was sort of imaginary coat that I was kind of wearing. And it's made me feel just so much lighter. And I think as a consequence, I've become I feel more in flow with life. And I kind of feel like I sound like a fucking self-help book, which is not the fucking idea. But
I love self-help books. I'm a walking, talking self-help book, so I get it.
But it really, my whole system is so different now.
Yeah.
My energy levels are different. My responses to frustrations is like, I might have responded really intensely to something previously, and now I'm like, okay, well, it is what it is. My response and my relation and my reaction to things is very different, much calmer, way more grounded. And I think probably the biggest thing is just that critical voice is really just thrown away.
Yeah, goodbye.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's very, and it's funny because even I'm like, oh, it's not there, right? And I've had it for 40-something years.
Yeah.
So it's so weird when you sort of wake up and you're like, oh, I've just made this decision to do this thing and I haven't second-guessed myself for 3 hours about it. I've just gone, oh, cool.
I feel just even in the conversation with you, because I'm on that journey too.
Yeah.
And there's a lightness of being. Like it feels, I operate on a certain channel, and I've been really working hard to change gears and change the channel because it's exhausting. And so when I hear you speak about that, I feel like that feeling in the chest, that anxiety, it just doesn't, it feels light. It feels like I can breathe just listening to you. It's almost like you going through that has given me permission in a weird sort of way. It sounds crazy.
But it's interesting too, because that concept of doerism, like you must be doing
all the time
and producing and achieving to be worthy. What bullshit that is.
Yeah, I know, but that's taken a long time.
Yeah. And that approach underpins everything, work, personal, what have you.
Yeah.
So
family.
All of it.
Yeah.
So I described it once, like for a long time I felt like it was a bumper car, just bumping into things and like feeling like it hurt to bump into things.
Yeah.
And now I sort of feel like I'm just wandering through a beautiful grassy field and loving it. Like
going back to the self-help book, I don't know if you've come across the work of Dr. Wayne Dyer.
No.
He was a self-help guru. He passed away a couple of years ago. I found his work about 10 years ago, but there's something I think about all the time. He said, change the way you look at things and the things that you look at change.
Yes.
Just listening to
1,000%.
you talk about your journey, that's exactly what I feel like. You've just changed the way you look at things.
Yeah.
Because they're the same things.
Easier said than done.
Of course.
I think that the perspective is one thing, the dealing with the physical nervous system part, because it's all stored in this is the brain, not just here. This is the brain as well. So just sort of addressing that concept, but applied to the whole body.
Yeah, and releasing it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I could stay in the woo-woo we might need a follow-up session on that.
I'm here for it. I'm so here for woo-woo.
I want to talk about the design work. And because
that's why we're here. That's right.
That's right. We're designers. No, it's about the journey. But I do want to talk about the concept of you sweat the small stuff.
Yes.
Like, I follow Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO.
Yeah.
Love him. And
I was thinking about you and getting you that book. I'm like, she's probably got it.
But he talks about sweating the small stuff.
Yeah.
You know, obviously I've been in the industry a while now, and I was an adult student in this industry. So you come with a different lens than when you study design from a young age. Maybe, and I don't want to say a critical lens, but it's just a mature lens, I guess, because I was a mature adult. But one of the things that I said, of all the designers I know, and I love everyone and I appreciate the work, I really genuinely, because I love design, it moves me physically. I have a physical reaction when I'm in a space and I see it's a visceral reaction. It makes me emotional. I have been known to walk into spaces and cry, feel like I want to cry. But I think what you do is it's so intelligent, it's so intuitive, it's so layered, there's depth to it. So I want to understand how you think, because I think you're a very intelligent designer. You approach it almost intellectually.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe. I think I am One of the skills that I do think I have is I can read people fairly well. So when someone says they want classic, well, my first response is, well, classic means this or this or this or this or this. So we interrogate a lot.
Yeah.
That's a really critical part of the process because my lens is mine and I can't explain why I like barramundi but not trout or why the next person likes steak more than vegetables. Like it's just how they're built. It's how they've, their taste is their taste. And their taste and their preferences will be informed by how they were raised, where they've lived in the world, what their experiences have been, and they're not always the same as mine. So going back to that signature look, we don't have a specific signature, but I think there's probably a bit of a thread that kind of does travel through all of the projects. It's important to me that there's the practical side, delivering a project on budget, on time. If those two things ever happen, let me know. Just joking. They do occasionally. Very small minority, but it does happen. It is possible. But because I also, like you, have a very visceral reaction to spaces. Tactility is really important to me and what things feel like to use, to touch, not just what they look like, the acoustics, the sound. So my senses within space are pretty finely honed and I also will sit in a space and my mood will completely shift from moving from one space to another. I don't know that everyone feels that way, but that skill is, I guess, what I'm kind of capitalize on. Yeah. So trying to then marry that with getting into the mind of someone, understanding what they want, what they think they need, and then with skill and experience, be able to say, yes, no, this will work, that won't work. We've tried this, we've tried that, etc. So it's multifaceted. Yeah. There's the intuitive part, there's the visceral part, there's the pragmatic, practical part, the functional part, then there's the experience part. Because I couldn't do a project without the experience of having done many projects and had success or failure in various parts of those projects. So it's a dance.
Yeah, dance. When you're creating a work, what makes your mind tick to get to that place, to see that detail, to whatever it is, the way you might sort of lay a material on a floor. I mean, it's detailed work. It's crafts. And coming back to a very, very early point in this conversation, you talked about craftsmanship. Yeah. Because it's one thing to imagine it, but then the other thing is to pull together the team, the craftsmen to execute.
Yes.
I mean, that's the ultimate, that's the holy grail.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's having a great community around you and relying on them. But to answer the detail question, how do we arrive at a detail? Truly, it's me sitting with a sketch pad, usually at like 10 or 11 p.m. at night when I have complete silence and quiet, and just output, like getting all the shit ideas out first, then kind of working to, and then looking at say 3 or 4 and being like, I'm going to sit with this for a minute. I usually like to sit with things. I don't usually like to just throw it out as like, yep, first option done. Sometimes that'll happen, fairly sort of infrequently. Do you nail it the first time? But I'm pretty big believer in like rigor. And also letting it percolate. We love to just sit on it for a sec and make sure, does it still feel great the next day, the week after? Sure. Cool. And obviously that's all time permitting. But I mean, if a client's brief has said, like describe yourself, well, like simple yet fun, like that would be the description we got for something. So that is going through my mind when I'm detailing. Yeah. How are they? Are they simple but fun? Okay, cool. Or like, are they workaholic? Okay, yep, they're workaholic and they're really, they take a lot of pride in their kind of their professional lives. And I really want to make sure that every single thing is really, really precise, really well executed. But that'd be different to how I would design for the person who is simple but fun. Yeah. So it does actually, like even the small stuff does go back to the big stuff. Yeah. And so it's just this kind of continual loop, but it's very intuitive is the answer.
Well, it's artistry. It is. When you're sitting there and you're doodling and you're...
I've never thought about it like that, but no, that's very kind.
It's artistry, and I think you've answered it for me because I'm always... that's, for me, the curiosity is like my brain just doesn't work that I can appreciate it. I can see it.
Yeah.
But I just can't detail like that.
Yeah.
I just can't.
It's funny. I think also maybe the sources of inspiration are really varied. So for example, we developed like this texture on bronze with a maker, and we applied it to suspended element. It was like a rain shot in a kitchen, and we've had lots of people say, "Oh my God, where did that come from?" It actually was inspired by a candle holder I saw. Yeah. Then like the shape of a dining table that I've just drawn up was inspired by like a pattern on a door I saw in Paris. Yeah. And then I saw an earring, like a vintage earring from Tiffany's in the 70s, saw a photo of it, and I was like, that shape would be beautiful in a wall sconce. So it's looking at all things, not just interior or interior adjacent items or elements. It's forms and ellipses and shapes and colours, and how they can influence. Yeah, like I love the colour of that coat. Can I use it on that ceiling? Like those sorts of things. Yeah. I pull it in, or I take photos of like the leaves on the ground next to, I literally took fucking photos of leaves on the ground next to the concrete when we were like in Paris recently. And I was like, I love the combination of those two colours together. Yeah. And then that will become, something. So it genuinely is very, very unpredictable, but just intuition ultimately about what feels right.
I want to end on talking about trends, because I will look at a project that you've done. And I know you've worked on this project probably at least 3 years prior. 3 years prior, these forms, colours, materials were nowhere to be seen. For me, I think when I look at your work, it's at the forefront of what is coming. It's sort of setting a seed for what is coming. That's what that's what I see. And I think I'm a pretty good barometer. I think I'm pretty critical in assessing things. I'm interested to sort of talk about this idea of trends versus designing for real artistry and design's sake. And how do you navigate that? Because we are in this attention economy and we are inundated with imagery. So how do you manage when a client comes in and shows you something, an arch, a bulbous? What is your take on all of that?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts about trends. I think, first of all, they're like a pendulum. It swings back and forth. A trend is typically a reaction to another trend.
Yes. And often an opposite reaction.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always an opposite reaction. Yeah. So
you look at history, design history.
Absolutely. You go back the last 120 years and it's wild. You'll go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's kind of funny. I think that the thing that trends do is they habituate people to being comfortable with something.
Yeah.
So the more a client or a practitioner ourselves will see something, the more comfortable we get with the idea of it, which is why sometimes it's really challenging to sort of try and push back on that when someone says, oh, I want this thing that everyone else has and is really comfortable with. And I think to myself, well, first of all, that thing will be, it'll be out in 5 or 10 years unless it's done well.
Really well.
And what does well mean? Well, it means to me, I can't speak for other people, but to me, it does mean that it's sort of approached and sort of refined in a rigorous way. And you've just worked it to get to the right point. And that's very general. I get that that's sort of almost conceptual or abstract in some way. But, arches, for example, they'll be around for hundreds and hundreds of years. Yeah. They've been around for thousands of years. They're not going out, guys. But they might get a bit quiet and then they might come back in because everything does eventually come around again. I think that the challenge nowadays, if you reflect back on design history over, say, the last 125 years, there's been very distinct movements and they've all been a reaction to the movement prior. And I think the world we live in now is multi-hyphenate. And so design is also multi-hyphenate. It's rather than there being a trend or an aesthetic that defines this period in time, it's a mishmash.
It really is.
Of many, many, many trends from before. And so I think the one thing that we try to avoid is creating anything that's a pastiche of one aesthetic or one style. I think part of being what I like to call myself polyamorous when it comes to design, because I genuinely do love so many different aspects of different design movements. And so I think I just sort of embrace that, but cherry pick the kind of the best of those movements in terms of whether it's, I mean, I have certain movements I probably more heavily towards, like I love Brazilian modernist design. So that's sort of where I kind of am most comfortable. But I also love Art Deco, the Vienna Succession movement. You know, like they're all vastly different from one another. I use the analogy of a dinner party. We don't want to invite all A-type stockbrokers, let's say, or conversely, we don't want to invite all shy, retiring wallflower accountants. Not that I'm totally engendering stereotypes that are really unfair right now, but I will say that you don't want just a dinner table full of silent, retiring librarians. You want a mixture, because all of these beautiful perspectives then stitch together for something that's really varied but balanced and interesting. So we seek shade. That's right. So we seek to do that in our work, and that's kind of the only way I can describe it. Truth be told, it's dinner party. Lots of different types of people at the table.
Love it. It's the greatest analogy. All right, I'm going to ask a couple of last questions. Sure. If you went back to your younger self, what would you whisper to her now with everything that you've learnt? In the last 10 or 15 years, what would you go back and tell her?
I would say to her not to listen to anyone else but herself.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Hands down.
I wish I'd just ignored all the noise.
Yeah. They're the life lessons, really. And our last signature question that we asked everybody, what does Build Beautiful mean to you?
Oof, yeah, I knew this was coming. I think Build Beautiful is to listen to yourself and your gut. So that's probably quite similar to my previous question. It's to listen to your own instinct and not to care or do what everyone else is doing if it doesn't resonate with you. If it resonates, that's fine. It's different. Yeah. But really, really, really just listen to what you personally, individually are after. And that can apply to myself as a designer or a client, as someone engaging a designer.
Yeah.
I think that's really critical.
Know thyself.
Know thyself, yes.
Great way to end this conversation. That was so amazing. I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast. And
thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to talk to you. I could talk to you for ages. Thank you for listening to Build Beautiful. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd follow the show, leave a review, or share it with someone who's building something meaningful. It matters more than you know. Follow us on Instagram at Build Beautiful Podcast. Until next time, keep creating with intention, and together we build beautiful.